Okay, this is for the basic tool matrix. This is for how to properly crimp RJ45s to cat5 cable. This is indoor-outdoor cable, so there's a few things that we need that you don't need for indoor cable. For one, you need something to wipe the goo off the cable. So you should be able to do this whole thing with this tool here. Every once in a while, I like to have this tool too, just in case something happens. And this is a cable tester. You don't need it, but it is nice to have, so you don't have to put a cable that you thought you did right, not to right. There is a QCA. It's not on the QCA page, but it is under RJ45 connector wiring PDF, which you can get from Tracker. It has the color codes. So, first thing we need to do is strip our black casing away from our wires. So there's a hole here with, you line your wire up. I like having my wires a little long. It's good to use this tool because this tool won't cut it into the inner cables, whereas if you used a cable stripper like we have for the RJ, for the poly or the 16 gauge, you would cut the small wires. So you stick it through this curved hole the length you want it, and you twist it and it'll cut it. That is our first step. Second step is to clean the nastiness off of this. The best thing to do is spread your wires apart, get it in, get your wires, your color wires untangled, like so. And the reason I like doing it long is so you're not fighting with these small little wires. And also, while you're doing this, clean off the wires, off the stuff that keeps it protected. Mind you, when you're working with smaller wire, you have to be gentle so you don't pull your inner wires out of the case. Longer wires ain't quite as easy to do, but when you're making like 4-foot jumpers or 6-foot jumpers, you can possibly do that. A way that I have done it to keep it knot, I use a needle nose vice grips, which helps. And if you lightly crimp it in the middle, or you're not pinching it, it'll hold the wires in position so you can work with it. Clean the wires off, getting them all straightened out so you can line them up. While we're working with the wires, we're constantly trying to straighten them up. So our color code is orange white, or you want to call it orange white stripe. I guess it doesn't really matter. It's first. So I'll make sure she's nice and straight. Then it's orange, solid orange. If you feel gunk on it, you just wipe her off a little bit more so she's easy to work with. Then it goes green, white stripe. The more you take time at this step of installation, the easier it is to put into the RJ45 connector. Take your time and it'll go good. So we have orange, white stripe, orange, green, white stripe, blue, solid blue. Then we have blue, white stripe. Then solid green. Sometimes you have to work the wire around so it comes in. Then it's brown, white stripe, brown. So you should have something that looks like that. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky. You want to make sure you get these wires as straight as you can. Straighter the better. Work with them just a tad. And you want to kind of get them worked closer together. Kind of always make sure you keep them, or always double check your color code, so if you get one off, you can get her back in position. Okay, so this is what it looks like. So we don't need quite that much wire. So what we want to do is, I always take my connector. The connector you always want to put up on upside down. So you want to be able to see the brass fittings, which are going to crimp down onto the cable. The cable is going to go into the connector with the black conduit going into the bottom part of the about 1/16 of an inch. So when you want to put together, you want to make sure that your cables will connect all the way through the brass and push so you can see the ends of the color. So I always bring it up like so, and I always go about a thumb length is what I do. And I always double check, and then I take my pair of dikes and I cut it straight across. The straighter the better. Sometimes with angled dikes it's hard to do. Okay, so what you should have now is you should have your wires sitting white, orange, white, orange, white, orange, green, white, blue, blue, white, green, brown, white, brown. Okay? So then what you want to do is take your RJ45 connector and slowly put it in, or the wires into the RJ45 connector. There's grooves that the wires, if you work at them, will go in. This is where sometimes wires jump. You carefully kind of work them in so none of them jump. Don't push them in too far. Make sure your colors are still where you want them, and then give them a heave-ho and push them in firmly. Now don't push too hard, but you want to get them firmly connected so you can take a look at the top and actually see the colors in the top of the RJ45 connector. And then notice how far the black conduit actually goes up into the connector itself. Then you take your crimper, your Klein tool crimper or whatever crimper you've got, but your RJ40, you need a RJ45 crimper. You slide it in to where it stops and you crimp down. Pull it out. Check your deal. Check all the deals up here. Make sure all your brass connectors have went into the RJ45 so that it has good connection with the wires. Then you will repeat the process. Take your Klein tool, put your wire into the bottom of the cutter where it cuts off your cable. And with this cable you get a little greasy, so sometimes it's hard. Break your cable away. Sometimes you don't cut it all the way, but you can, and if you get to a point that you kind of got one spot, you can be very careful and use exact knife, but you got to be careful because you can cut the wires on the bottom. That's why you want to make sure you do a proper cut in the first place. But and if that don't work, start over. So, and this one will actually cut small for you too. But like I said, I like working with longer wires. just a little easier. So make sure you get all the way around the cable, like so. And also make sure that you have not damaged your wires stripping the cover off. Again, it will cause erosion, it'll cause grounds. You want to make sure get your colors all stripped down. Like so. See how it can be damaged? However, that's up towards the top of the wire, so it's not quite so critical because I'll be cutting a majority of this off. Like I said, I'd rather have a proper done wire and then an improper, so I always make sure I use longer wire. So again, orange, white, orange, and sometimes just moving this back and forth will get them kinks out of there. Then you want orange, and we want green, white, green. Like so. And then we want blue. Like I said, take your time, make sure you get all the, sometimes these wires don't like going where they want to go. We got blue, like so. And then we have blue, white. Sometimes you have to move them around. Blue, white. And then green. And then brown, white, brown. And I always like spreading them out and make sure I can get them to work right, because when you get them close together, they're harder to work with. Clean them off real good. So we got orange, white, orange, green, white, blue, blue, white, green, green, brown, white, brown. And if it looks like you need to move a wire a different direction, make sure you move it. And sometimes it just needs to be done sometimes. Orange, green, white, blue. Again, take your RJ45, measure up where do you want to do it, always upside down, make sure you know what you're looking at. Get your wires close together and cut off in a straight line. If you don't do it in a straight line, you won't get all the pins to connect correctly, and then you're going to have to take the RJ45, cut it off, and do it over again. RJs are not ones that when you do them, you have to, if they're not done right, they have to be done over again. So then you have to do the fancy, these will all go in their groove. You just got to make sure you get all these lined up correctly. And make sure you got them in order still. Always double check your colors. And they normally slide in really easy, and then crimp, push down that little black so it goes in there. Make sure your colors all coming through. This is where the straight cut comes. If you get an angled cut sometimes on the top, grab your Klein tool, set your cat RJ45 connector inside, and crimp down. And sometimes you gotta do it a couple times. Sometimes the button gets stuck and then you have to fiddle with it, but it comes out eventually. Double check your brass connectors, and technically if you've done it correctly, you're done. However, I always like test it, and this will tell you if you've got a dead one or if you've got two wires crossed. It shows that I have all the wires working correctly, so it's a good